So I'm going to request by asking you to think of something. How many of you are here today by yourself without knowing a single person in this room? That is, you have no family member or no friend accompanying you. Somehow the idea, oh, there is a fair number. Thank you. I thought I won't be able to see the count. I can count at least 4. Somehow the idea of being by ourselves evokes anxiety. And I'm not talking of dire situations such as hospitalization, or even the one that Tom Hanks found himself in Castaway, that of being on an island on his own. I'm talking of regular, everyday situations like the one today where you've come to attend a show. We fiddle with our phones, we call someone if it's possible. We definitely jump onto the internet. We watch TV if that's possible again. Anything is better than having to be by ourselves. My mother has told me when I was around 3 years old, I would stand on the balcony railings in our house in Delhi and smile at strangers who went past. As an adult, I can tell you I have not outgrown the habit. Not even when I read in an article recently that Indians are very skeptical of those who smile a lot and rate them as less intelligent. Perhaps they rate them as more vulnerable too. So given all of this, what happens when you are dealing with strangers and you smile? So this was February 2015 when I'd gone to visit my parents who are based in Chennai, and I suggested that we do a road trip to some place close by. My maternal grandmother, who's well over 80, she was already well over 80, yes, and she loves to travel despite her brutally bent back and her advanced age. So the idea was to get everybody to move while they still could, and we agreed on a trip to this place called Kanjipuram. Back then, my grandparents used to live by themselves, and my grandfather, who passed away last year, didn't want to come for the trip. So the 4 of us set off. On the way, my grandmother narrated instances from her previous trip to the same place, and the agenda back then included sari shopping and temple hopping. This time, the agenda was more modest. We were just going to visit 3 temples. Now, if you've been to temples in South India, you'd be familiar with the stunning architecture and open spaces found in many of them. And in the 3rd and the last temple we visited for the day, we managed to reach a few minutes before it shut for the afternoon. By then, my grandmother was tired and she said she would wait in the cab. So the 3 of us went inside and then somehow struggled to locate our way inside the main shrine. A priest, perhaps in his 30s, spotted us and he voluntarily showed me the way. I thanked him, I smiled, I thanked him, and then we went for the darshan inside. Soon enough, we were on our way outside with my parents leading the way. I, as usual, was lingering a little bit, taking a few snaps in permissible zones and getting a closer look at some of the details. Stuff like the height of doors, the lamps that were lit, the color of wood, the slant of sunlight, and the coarse sand under my feet. Just taking it all in, my father waited to click a few snaps of me and then he walked ahead. Finally, it was my turn to step outside the temple grounds and I saw the cab parked close by. Now, before I could walk ahead, the same priest who showed me the way came on a motorcycle, stopped me, handed me a plastic bag and said in Tamil that it was prasadam, prasad hai. Now, I peered into the bag and I didn't say anything. By then, my father was standing next to me and he didn't react either. Now, we weren't sure if this was a special privilege or a normal custom or even a service that one had to pay for. And given that I was showing no interest in wanting to interact with this priest, he turned to my father and he said, in Tamil, "Is she scared? Bayama irukka avalukku?" Now, even though this was an unfamiliar place and I was dealing with a stranger, the thought of fear really hadn't struck me. I'm old enough to take care of myself. I knew the local language. It was daytime. I was with my family, I was not by myself. And it was a place of worship. People are supposed to be at their best behavior there, right? And even in this era of Google Maps and other applications that tell you where to go and how to go, asking for directions is an acceptable practice. So why was I expected to feel fear and why did the stranger respond this way? A few days after this visit, I was chatting with Yogesh, who was away to watch the Cricket World Cup in Australia. He's done multiple stories with Tall Tales, and I hope you get a chance to hear him live sometime. During the conversation, he introduced me to the idea of improv and improv shows. And post the rather persuasive conversation, I have attended many improv shows on my own, including shows here at the Cuckoo Club. So this was November 2015 on a Sunday when I went for an improv show at this venue called the House of Wow. I don't know if any of you've been there. It's in Bandra. And back then, it was an unknown new venue for me. It demanded that we leave our footwear outside. And once I walked down the stairs, I found myself wanting to familiarize myself with the basement where it was located. A very well lit place. I was fascinated to see a brightly painted and it was a very well maintained circular typewriter. I started fiddling with the keys when I heard a voice from my right hand, from the right direction, and I turned to see who it was. A man had started talking to me about typewriter erasers, and he wasn't a local. And conversation veered around the reason for him to visit Bombay, my then place of work, how, if I ever wanted to get something published, he could help because he was a publisher. Just then, some of the improvisers stepped outside after their practice and waved to me, and this man immediately said, "You must be popular, they all seem to know you." I shook my head vigorously, "No, no, 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 I'm just a regular at the show," and that's about it. The show was about to start, and I found a seat in the front. He came and sat next to me. When the break arrived, given this man's age, I asked him if he wanted water or something to eat. He didn't want to eat anything, so I brought him a bottle of water. And then he launched into a conversation about his family. He told me all about his wife, his children, the elderly aunt he had come to visit. And doing the math in my head, I realized he was close to my father's age, and his kids were close to me in age. And he mentioned he was a Sindhi, so I asked him the impact of partition on his family and him, and on and on like that. Now, somewhere along the way, we exchanged business cards. After the show, I stopped to speak with Yogesh, who asked me if this man was known to me. His tone was cautionary, but I smiled and I said, "No, no, no, I have no idea, I've just about met him." Later, I was sitting on the stairs while putting my footwear on when this man came from behind. He bid me goodbye, warmly wished me the best, and left. I presume he left before me. The next day, it was a usual Monday at work when I was typing out an email when my phone announced the presence of a new text message. It was this man saying that I was reasonably senior in my organization and how he was very happy to have met me yesterday. By then, I had looked him up on the internet and for his publisher credentials, and he seemed like a decent man who liked interacting with those who were younger than him. Yet, I was shocked at receiving a message from him, and I was also shocked at my shock. My body became tense, and I could sense the frown that had settled on my face, because I had never expected him to get in touch with me ever. And I started wondering how he got my number. Did he track me down from the venue's register? Did he call at the office reception and ask for my number? Did he think he could continue talking about vacation indulgences like Thai sandwich massages and all of that again? When the momentary panic settled down, I asked him how he got my number, and he replied in an ultra casual manner, something that I would associate with somebody who was 40 years younger than him. He mentioned the number was on the visiting card. Of course, my number was there on my visiting card, and I told myself that I must hand them out a little more judiciously. And he then mentioned something about his evening routine that day, some place he was going to. And I kept thinking as to why was he giving me details of his evening routine. Tuesday arrived. In the afternoon, I got an email giving me details of a 6 p.m. routine for the day. The frown reappeared, and I can't quite remember now if I replied, but I definitely deleted the email, for it was on my official email ID, and I read it. Wednesday came, as per schedule. I deleted the text messages from Monday because looking at them had started making me nervous. Now it was the turn of Thursday. Was he going to get in touch today? He didn't. Now, after these two instances, this was March 2016, when I was traveling from Chennai to Bombay, and a Maharashtrian professor from a very well-known engineering college was my co-passenger. I was at the window seat, he was on the middle seat. You can sense when somebody's looking at you through the corner of your eye, and if I realize on time, I usually return the gaze. But this was one of those days when I was not ready to make conversation. I was reading a Julian Bond book that was taking far too long to complete, and I wanted put the flight time to good use. So I started reading. After a while, I took a break. And I placed the book on my lap when this man reached out, lifted the book, nodded approvingly, and launched into a conversation on his 2 courses in college. He asked me for my educational background, and when I told him, he mentioned that the non-technical course would be right up my alley. It was titled Perspective of Society, Science and Technology. Much later, I realized it sounded like SST. He gave me 3 points on what constitutes a successful marriage, and Julian Barr was waiting for me with a chapter on Rudyard Kipling, and I was getting lectured on sexual compatibility and more, no thanks to my background in management. And isn't a book supposed to be off-putting and a sign that conversation will not take place? Clearly not. I quickly diverted the conversation to his wife, asked him what she thought about the topic, and sincerely asked him as to why young engineering students need to be coached on marriage as part of the technical curriculum. And somewhere we thankfully came back to India and China and manufacturing and GDP, etc. I abruptly went back to my book and the conversation ended. Now, 2 incidents accompany 3 is a crowd, and all 3 times, the feeling I remember most is that of feeling weird. No unwelcome physical contact was present. They were all men who thought they were genuinely being nice to me, and yet, all interactions left me tense. Now, one of my personal rules is that when something weird happens, I don't discuss or talk about it immediately. I like for things to settle down. And even when I do discuss for the first time, it must preferably be with somebody who has seen the instance for himself or herself. It is almost as if I cannot validate the weirdness for myself and I need somebody else to spell it out for me. And in the time between the incident and the first time I speak about it, I agonize over whether I have said something inappropriate and whether I'm making it all about myself. Because what we call weird is not a set, precise definition that you can apply across people and across situations. Some activities invite such instances more than the others though, and I started asking myself if I was doing the right thing by moving around so much on my own. I kept thinking of how out of 2 out of 3, these 3 men were close to my father's age and spoke about personal topics without a hint of caution, how I was supposed to feel fear when I didn't feel it, and how I was expected to seek company all the time. Thankfully, the phase didn't last for too long, recollections helped. The delightful conversations I've had with strangers, including children. The strangers who've gone on to become acquaintances. How more than 3 years ago, I attended my first Tall Tale show. And Gayatri was there, she's there in the audience, she performed that day. And now I have performed in front of strangers more than once. How I didn't panic or reply hurriedly when the improv gentleman got in touch with me over 2 years later to inform me about a house in South Mumbai that is on sale. So if any of you want to know, I can give you details. And despite the gaze that will occasionally and ruthlessly follow you, I would recommend getting used to your own company. You just might end up knowing the most important person in your life, and you might help that person. You will help yourself. Thank you.